As a nation, America is known for many things. According to CBS News, the population in other countries view America in a variety of ways, but three ideals tend to pop up the most: obesity, capitalism, and freedom. This isn't surprising, as America is often viewed as overreacting, overweight, comedically unintelligent.
Come on. Every second I'm out of bed, I'm burning precious calories. Now get grubbing!
Or sometimes as money-hungry corporate peoples reigning over the uneducated population under a capitalist facade.
Of all the things I hold in high regard, rules are not one of them.
But there is that value of freedom that America has kept up since its conception. And this is no coincidence, as in the basis of American government lays the protection of freedoms, a large one being social movement. Today we'll be talking about the three main types of social movement in America, that being resistance movements, reform movements, and revolutionary movements. First, let's get into resistance movements. Resistance movements are organized for one purpose: to resist change. An example of one of these movements is the National Right to Life Committee, an American Catholic pro-life organization that sets its focus on the opposition of abortion under any circumstances. This also includes embryonic stem cell research, contraception, and euthanasia. Like many other resistance movements, the National Right to Life Committee was formed in response to a big governmental change, this one being Roe v. Wade. Resistance movements like these were popularized during World War II, where the internationalist and communist-led resistance became extremely large in Nazi and Soviet-occupied countries. These movements strongly opposed communism and left the basis for so many left-winged and right-winged American resistance movements. Next, let's get into reform movements. Reform movements tend to be what people first think of when it comes to protest and organization against social issues, because its spike in popularity and necessity is astronomical. Reform movements are formed in order to alter or change something that's perceived as incorrect in society. A large example of this in today's times is Black Lives Matter.
It's about innocent people who are halfway through their process. We don't know what George Floyd could have achieved. We don't know what Sandra Blank could have achieved. But today, we're going to make sure that that won't be an alien thought to our young ones.
Black Lives Matter is a social movement formed in America advocating against incidents of systematic racism, specifically when it comes to police brutality. Reform movements have had large importance in American culture, some of the first being the abolitionist movements in the 1800s, as well as the women's suffrage movements. These still hold large cultural movements in today's times and can be seen in many movements like the Time's Up movement.
Women in Hollywood are joining forces now to say time's up.
That is the name of a new coalition formed to address sexual harassment issues in the workplaces nationwide.
Monica, you are an organizer with the National Farm Workers Alliance, and you reached out and wrote this open letter to the Hollywood industry.
We wanted to ensure that women in Hollywood and others who are coming forward didn't feel alone, and that they knew that we stood with them in power.
And a large amount of movements against social injustice. Lastly, and maybe the most intense, is revolutionary movements. Revolutionary movements aim for one goal, and that's complete abolishment and overturning of policy. These are the focus of history books and have existed for as long as people have had society. One example of this change includes the revolutions of 1989 that occurred in Central Asia and Eastern Europe. These movements stemmed from the fight against one-party systems that promoted communism in many countries around the world, pushed by the United States and many other capitalist societies. These revolutionary movements are powerful and have the ability to completely change the government worldwide. Social change is inevitable around the world, and America has proclaimed itself the face of this movement towards progress. Any definition of progress. The freedom that our Constitution provides have led us into an age that many have never been able to see in history, where people of any descent, race, sexuality, gender, and so much more have been able to make their voice heard. And pushing through the Simpsons and capitalist view of America, this is what has defined this generation of American people, as well as what will continue to. American people are only growing when it comes to social movement, and this can be seen throughout the year of 2020. When it comes to coronavirus and the Black Lives Matter movement, movements have only grown in power, and we can see that the next generation is more than ever to be ready to take on any action that's needed to make sure that things are set morally and ethically right.